Thank you. It's really good to be here. I can't see you, but I assume you are out there. So let me read to you from John's Gospel. You'll know that in John's Gospel, stuff that Jesus says is arranged by John under big headings. And there's a whole series of things called the I am sayings, where he says, I am the resurrection and the life, I am this, I am that. And John 10 picks up at some of those sayings. And I want to use those this evening to help us think a bit about what it means to have God in our lives in the everyday. So John chapter 10, and Jesus says this, very truly I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. Just making sure we're on the same page. We are, that's right. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he's brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him, because they know his voice. They won't follow a stranger, but they will... Sorry, my eyes are slightly gone here. But they will run for him because they don't know the voice of strangers. Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they didn't understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and destroy. I've come, they might have life and have it more abundantly. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Lord, we ask that you'll speak to us now through your word in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. This astounding claim that Jesus makes, that I've come to give you life, life more abundantly. And it's a theme that resonates with all kinds of people. Some of our schools now use John chapter 10 and verse 10 as their kind of school motto. So you'll walk in through the doors of a Church of England school and you'll find John 10:10 up in lights, because that's what we believe we're doing in education. We're showing people that Jesus has come to bring abundant life. And even folk who don't come from Christian backgrounds find that appealing. And when it comes to our understanding of what we are doing in our daily lives, John 10:10, that claim, that astounding claim that we've got abundant life, is something that we need to embrace and to think through and to work out what it means for us day by day. Jesus uses in this passage two pictures, the picture of himself as the good shepherd and the picture of himself as the gate. And he does both. I don't know what you know about shepherds. I'm not actually all that clued up on shepherds. Willesden is not an area where there's a lot of farming that goes on. You may have noticed. We have got a couple of farms in Harefield. We've got a farm, those of you who've been to Hall's Farm up in King George V Avenue, you'll know there are a few of them around. They're not full of sheep, though, mainly. So my knowledge of sheep and sheepfolds is not very great. But anyway, when you listen to this passage, you have to think a bit about the fact we're not talking about your typical English shepherd. You're not somewhere out on the hills of Cumbria calling the sheep in and the dog running around and herding them all in. The picture's different here. When Jesus talks about sheep and shepherding, he's talking about the Near Eastern understanding that was around in his day and also around in our day. The idea was that you get the sheep, you keep them from harm by getting them at night inside a sheepfold, inside a bricked-in area, a stockade, if you like, and the sheep are all safe inside. And what happened was that the shepherd would sleep in the gap they came in by so that the sheep couldn't get out and the wild animals couldn't get in. And that's the picture he's using here. He's saying, if you want to understand the relationship that I've got with those who follow me, it's about me being the shepherd and the gate, and he uses those two terms interchangeably, and for you to understand that that means that's how you are, and that's how I am to you. Now, you've been doing a series over these past weeks thinking about your daily life with God, thinking about what you do, not just in church on a Sunday, but that sense that our lives of discipleship are led out in the real world, that 90% of what we do is in what you do at work or at home or in the community, in the lives God's given you. And this passage helps us to address that a bit. So let me just try and unpack what I think Jesus is saying here. There are two things right at the beginning that help us center ourselves in all this. First is this: my sheep hear my voice, and I know them by name. And that being known by name means that there's an identity which is given to us. Now, this isn't rocket science. When you first followed Christ, when you first became a Christian, when you first found yourself making a commitment to God in Jesus Christ, you realized that what he was saying to you was, hey, your name, you are mine. I am yours. We are in relationship. We talk about that. We sung about it constantly tonight. It's fundamental to the Christian faith. I am known by name. Where do I get my identity? It's in Jesus Christ. You might remember that Justin Welby recently had this big story that blew out in the papers where they discovered that actually the guy he thought was his father wasn't his father. His biological father was somebody else. And there's a big kind of archbishop is born out of wedlock kind of story, and all the kind of insinuations that went with that. And I think they tried to do it as a story that would kind of spook Justin. And what was really good about it was his response. Because he said, well, okay, I do care who my father is. I do care that my father, as I thought it was, is not the father who actually is my biological father. But I get my identity because of who I am in Jesus Christ. That's what makes me secure. That's who I am. And for all of you, when you get stuff that happens to you, and stuff happens, doesn't it, day by day, in your workplace, in the context in which God's put you, which challenges you and says, can I cope with this? Can I live this stuff? The thing you hold on to is the fact that you are who you are in Jesus Christ. That's what gives us the security we need to live for him day by day. And then the other thing he does with this sheep picture, he says, okay, sheep are known and known by name, and each one of them is known by name. Shepherds will be able to identify sheep. To you and me, sheep are mainly just a bunch of woolly animals that all look the same, but if you're a shepherd, you know them. You know which one's which. But they also hear his voice. And they will respond to the voice of the shepherd. And Jesus talks a bit about the fact that if you hear the wrong voice and you're a sheep, you don't follow. But if you hear the authentic voice of the shepherd, you will follow. And of course, that helps us again a bit with what it means to be people who know our place and what we are meant to be doing in our daily work. Because we have that word, vocation. And vocation is a word which comes from the Latin word that underpins this idea of calling. And we believe people are called to live for Christ in particular places. Now, the trouble is, the church has messed up in using this term vocation. We've, for years, preached on it, and you have things like Vocation Sunday. What that actually means is people who wear white collars. You will notice your clergy are all dressed up tonight. I think it's because I'm here, but I'm not sure. But they told me they had to get their collars out and polish them and put them on so that they look like proper clergy. That's what proper clergy look like. Actually, it's a good identifying symbol, but there we are. But we kind of messed up the idea of vocation by thinking that what it means is put a collar on and work as a priest in the Church of God. And yes, that is a particular vocation. It's important. I'm really glad that St. Peter's has supplied numerous people, one of them sitting in front of me, Mohan as well, who's there, and others like Lauren who've been ordained and gone elsewhere. You've had loads of people who've come out of this congregation to serve God in the church, and we're still exploring that with other people. That's a great thing. I'm not going to repent of calling people to the possibility of priesthood. It's really good. But remember, vocation is bigger than that. It's about the job you do day by day. It's about your calling to be a parent and perhaps stay at home and look after the kids. It's about your calling to serve God in the community or in politics in a voluntary way. It's about even the struggle that you have sometimes if you haven't got an identified piece of work that you're doing, but you're still in God's will. Vocation is about that. Now that's good, isn't it? That means that we know that when we think about our daily lives, we know both that Jesus knows us and that he's called us. And sometimes finding out what the vocation actually is a struggle because we change jobs, we do different things. I spoke to someone this morning and prayed with them. They said, I've had 3 or 4 different jobs recently. Which is the right one for me? What am I discerning? And one of the things I think is really important is that in our churches, we open this area up. I think you've been encouraged to do this over these past weeks. I want to say to you, please do, because the more we talk about what it is that we're struggling with in our lives, the good things, the bad things, share testimony, and tell people what's going on, the better it is for us. Do you talk to each other in your home groups, in the fellowship you have together, about what's actually happening in the world in which you're living for 90% of your week? And if you don't, you ought to, because it's really good for us to hear from each other and support each other. When I first started in Christian ministry, I think the kind of sum total of our understanding of popular stuff about what you did for Christians and work was that you would say to be a person at work is to be someone who's totally honest and trustworthy, that's good, and who didn't swear, and who didn't pinch the paper clips. And that was the kind of sum total of our Christian theology of work. Well, we need to get better than that. We need to be able to help each other talk about the nitty-gritty of what it means to be people who work for Jesus Christ, because that's part of your life of discipleship and vocation. And then Jesus switches the picture, and apart from hearing the voice of the shepherd and knowing that the shepherd knows you by name, he says something about being the gate. So he kind of messes around with this picture. Well, at some points in the story, he's the shepherd. At other points, he's the gate. But it's all about he's the entry point for how we do things. And he talks about 2 things that I just want to help you think about this evening. I would call them, I suppose, gate crashers and gatekeepers. Gate crashers are those who don't get what the Christian understanding of work is all about. They have a kind of false view of what we think about in terms of daily lives. What I might call the instrumental view of work. I work to get money to live. That's it. Now sometimes, that's what our jobs feel like. But the Christian understanding says there's more than that. It's not just about working for the man in order to receive the money. There's got more to it than that. Or it might be that you're tempted, because the kind of industry you're in is one where everyone is fighting for themselves, to be a kind of more egotistical view of work. The creatives, the madmen. There's plenty of those around, all fighting each other, dog eat dog. And that, again, isn't a good, strong theology of work, it seems to me, because it's actually about self-fulfillment and not who I am in Jesus Christ. And that's why talking to each other helps us to see that work is more than some of the things that are laid upon us. This isn't Britain's Got Talent. This is God's got talent. He wants to use you in a particular way. And it's very, very different. So I would say be very clear that you're well away from the gate crashers, the ones who crash what it means to be work. You've probably done some stuff, I guess, on Genesis in this series on work. And Genesis is foundational to our understanding of how it is that we understand work. Genesis chapter 1 talks about human beings being made in God's image, being creative, being people who will do the things that God calls them to do, who will be stewards of creation. There's a whole understanding of the goodness of what it calls to be, what it means to be workers. And then Genesis chapter 3 kind of complements that or undermines it a bit by saying, and when the fall happened, God said, the ground is cursed. Work will be hard. There'll be drudgery in life. So don't be surprised if something of your experience of the world of work It's not all good. It's not all creative. There is some pretty awful stuff as well in the world of work. And that's natural because we're both creatives and we're fallen. We're both people who get it right and people where the world is marred and we get it wrong. And we have to live with that understanding of work. And that's why, again, it's good to support each other in the world of work. So get yourselves back away from the gate crashers into the understanding of what it means to be focused on Jesus. Again, that song we sang about getting ourselves back to our first love applies in the world of work as well. And then the other thing you can get wrong, I guess, is those who become gatekeepers. There are Christians who will try and make you think about work in ways that are not particularly helpful. Indeed, I would go so far as to say were wrong. So you may be somebody who hears preachers who say, if you work hard enough, God will give you your heart's desire, you'll become rich. There's a whole story about health and wealth in the gospel, and God will give you your blessings, your heart's desire. Seek what God has in store for you. Plenty of preachers on God TV and other places that will try and give you that narrative. And of course, that's not, again, what is true about the gospel. God does not promise us health and wealth and happiness all the days of our lives. And it's a facile piece of preaching to try and understand things in that way. Don't be tempted by that health and wealth gospel. And equally, be clear about the fact that we're sometimes also a bit distorted in the whole vision of work that God gives us. We work hard for 6 days, and then we come to church and work even harder for the 7th day. And that's not healthy or right either. What did God build into the universe? He gave us an understanding of creation which said he made the world, but on the 7th day he rested. And that's a metaphor, a picture for what it means for us. We need space in our lives. We need the capacity to relax, to enjoy, to refresh, to be with family, with household, with friends, to be people who are rejuvenated. And the church shouldn't lay upon us a kind of activism which means that we work without rest. We need work and rest. We need rhythm in our lives. And you've probably heard more about that too. But that's crucial to what it means to be proper Christians. So beware of the gatekeepers who try and distort the way in which we understand our way of work. Well, what I want to do tonight is really to pick up on what you've been doing over these weeks and to say this. God is God every day of the year, wherever you are. We have in some of our churches, and I guess it's probably something that you've done here, but I would love you to do more of it, a thing called This Time Tomorrow, where we get people to stand up and talk about what they've been doing in their lives, and so that you get to know each other. This process I've talked about mutual support, is really good. If you hear from others, this is the stuff I face, and well, we're late at night tonight, but so if you say 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, I will be off to do something this time tomorrow, and these are the things I need prayer for. This is what my life will be like. And that's a really exciting way to support each other. But This Time Tomorrow builds on this idea that we're ambassadors for Jesus Christ. It says we are being Christian, we are being disciples when we reflect God's purposes wherever he's put us day by day. This Time Tomorrow says God is as real for us. He's the one who calls us by name. He's the one who knows us and loves us. And it's true in the most difficult things you face in your workplace context, in your home context. Being an ambassador is about saying, Jesus Christ is with me, and I go out there to represent him in my daily life.